Good morning, Eastview physiologist. Happy Monday. Welcome to a new week. Excited. It's a short week. You get Friday off. So uh, who the heck knows what you can do in this crazy COVID world with proper social distancing on a Friday. Anyhow, it's Monday. So here we go. Before we start talking a little immunity and kind of feeding into some of the stuff you did with your packet, couple things to let you know. Tuesday, again, is going to be our next extravaganza where we all get together as a class. And again, I have to say it, that day we did last week made my day. It was awesome. Even though there wasn't a whole lot of conversation between us in a short period, it was still excellent. So Tuesday, April 21 is our next time together. I'll send out the information later tonight and a reminder tomorrow as to the Zoom time. And again, it's going to go from 1:20 to we're scheduled, let's see, 1:20 to 1:55 is when we're allowed to, as a 6-hour class period, rock and roll. It's going to be a cooperative quiz. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a quiz set up online under our lymph immunity folder, and you will take that. It'll have set times, and you will take that before the 1:20 extravaganza. So I'm going to set it up from between noon and 12:30. Between 7 a.m. and 12:30. So that before we come to class and get together, you have taken the quiz. It'll be on the lymph system, and whatever immunity we kind of go through today, which is really first line, a little bit of second line, but really go back to lymph system and stuff and look over those little videos and the stuff that we talked about there. And then some of the immunity, know your immunity packet, that's going to help a little too. And certainly, although I can't think of off the top of my head, and I'd have to find the book, what chapter it is, we do have chapters in the book on lymph and immunity. So you can look those over. Those are great resources, just background stuff. So you'll take that quiz before 12:30 and get that in there. I'll be eyeing it and making sure everybody's got a score. And it will have a time limit, somewhat like we do in class, although it's probably going to be less questions. I don't know. It's not completely done yet. And then when we get together, we'll have a way to have you download again the questions, work on them as a group. I'll put you in breakout rooms, download them as a group. Somebody will have to be the typer kind of communicator, and then upload it as a assignment, and we'll see how it goes. It is going to count, but we will see. We'll just see how it goes. I imagine we're all doing good right now, and we'll be there. And it'll be fine. If you were not at our last class period, this is not one to miss. So make it work. Anyhow, so that's it. And really the rest of this week, we're going to wrap up immunity. And then we're going to go back a little bit to the circulatory system and pull in things that were common between the two. And I encourage you again to keep going with watching the news, reading articles. I'll put stuff out there for you, but make that match of what's going on right now in life to what we're learning here, and the overall big picture of, as a physiologist, then how does that take into everything? One of the stories on the news this morning was about a Broadway actor who had to have his leg amputated. And it's a circulatory system issue caused by the virus, with some of the, going back to some of that stuff, the New England Journal of Medicine article that was tough to read said. But really it's as it affects things, there's a blood clotting issue, and a serious blood clot issue that can then cause cell death and stuff for things that aren't getting nutrients and blah, 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 and more. So anyhow, as we do this stuff, really do teach yourself to be a solid physiologist by paying attention to the news and what we're teaching. Anyhow, when we were last going over the stuff, we went through the lymph system, which is really, again, a one-way circulatory system that brings the leftover fluids and blah, 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 and keeps blood volume up and dumps it into the veins right before the heart so it can keep blood volume up and blood pressure and stuff that we're going to connect to it starting next week. And that's because it's more open. The capillaries are much more free to allow things of different size in and out. And we kind of use that as how does the coronavirus get in and do its thing, with a little also viral, how do viruses infect cells, and et cetera, et cetera. And looked at some of those effects on things that can happen in the lymph system, like edema, et cetera, et cetera. So then the question, and just a reminder, and some of this you may remember from biology, and some of it you may not. Some you may know from health class, I don't know. Anyhow, so what does your body do to protect you against all the pathogens that could be out there? And what happens when it evades? And that's the immunity issue. Now, the first, oops, my face is in the way of the notes. Anyhow, the first thing we look at, and this was also true of your packet, are the non-specific defenses. And those are just general defense systems that guard against antigens. It doesn't specify by what the antigen is. They just they can help and attack anything. Okay. So, and here, yeah, again, non-specific defenses present from birth and do not distinguish one type of threat from another. So, physical barriers. That's first line of defenses we're going to talk about shortly. Physical barriers that don't allow things in. Okay. Then, really kind of the second line of defense, and we won't get through all these, but leukocytes and stuff in your bloodstream and stuff in the lymph system to some extent, and everything else that will do stuff, things that flow around, proteins that do, and natural killer cells that do immunological surveillance. I don't know why I can't say that on a Monday, and just are flowing into blood and looking for foreign pathogens. Interferons are a protein that, unfortunately, general interferon technology, they'd love to find a way to make those proteins be fall in the specific area of immunology and target them. A lot of that started with HIV and looking for interferon treatments, but the problem is they're a general thing and they're not tasked to look for specific things. The inflammatory response, getting a fever is part of the inflammatory response to denature the enzymes and stuff of bacteria and stuff that may be invading. Anyhow, those are the type of things that we're going to look at here in a second. And let's just start with the first line of defense. And the first line of defense is the skin and all the epithelial stuff. That is that barrier, that is that, and even openings to the inside, although we learned the mouth and some of that stuff isn't really inside in that inside-outside argument of that tube, like you're from going from the mouth to Uranus. That's really technically to some extent outside the body, not inside the body, because to get inside the body, you have to be inside a cell. Anyhow, the skin itself, flexible barrier, keratinized, waterproofed extravaganza. Things just don't diffuse into it. You can't just get, bacteria or virus or things going in there. And as you kind of see on the news about not touching your face and around your eyes and stuff, is not given the coronavirus a pathway in. You have oils and sweat creating acidic environments. You also have bactericides, lysozymes, and all sorts of enzymes there, so that things land on there are supposed to kill stuff. We know that in some of that, you can mucus covering entries into the body, the mouth, in saliva, there's bactericides, et cetera, et cetera. All those, we talked about this a long time ago. All those have some sort of fluid matrix. nostrils, ear with earwax when we talked hearing, and little buggies like to crawl in there. Cerumen is supposed to trap and allow things to die and everything else, and then do that stuff. And they all have enzymes in them to try and kill bacteria. Your tears even have lysozymes and stuff. That's part of the not touching around your eye stuff. We know you got boogers, and again, that's all to trap with the hairs and everything else. Yes, you have saliva, but think of the pseudostratified ciliated epithelium that protects your respiratory system, and the mucus that lines that to try and trap stuff before it gets in there. Vaginal epithelial tissue has secretions and enzymes and stuff so that infections can't come in through the vagina. Anal epithelial tissue also has protective secretions and stuff that do that. Urine. Urine in itself is sterile, but it also, so you can minimize urinary infections and stuff we'll have. So that's first line, is don't let it get into the cell. And that's the first key. Don't let it get inside. That's the first line of defense. Non-specific, but there it is. So some of those things that we talk about, and again, let me move my face out of the way. The integumentary system, the skin, you have sebaceous and sweat glands. Okay, and you sweat and you do stuff, and even the sebaceous glands are just producing the oils, and that will wash away microorganisms and chemical agents. You may also have bactericidal chemicals, destructive enzymes and antibodies and stuff. Your hair on your arm, on your head, on whatever, protects you from mechanical abrasions and prevents hazardous materials or insects from contacting the skin. And again, we know stratified squamous epithelium, that you have that many layers, because that's dust. Every time when I put on this little jacket this morning, and it scraped against my arms, that's scraped off skin cells. Any touch, any abrasion, no matter how light, I'm creating dust right now. Yay. Will knock off some layers of some of that keratinized epithelial. Okay. And that's all to keep stuff from getting in. And again, we talked about other epithelial linings, digestive, respiratory, urinary, reproductive tracts, all have cells that provide a physical barrier and secretions, mucus, enzymes, acids, whatever, that are there to destroy pathogenic material. Okay. First line. Then second line. Okay. You can't keep everything. You get cuts, you get boo-boos, things get in, they do stuff. You throw your hands in a bucket of coronavirus and touch your face or whatever. Then we'll go through some of these, but not all. But we'll start with some of those non-specific immune cells. Okay. These are things that are, we saw them with when you get cuts and boo-boos, macrophages, big monocytes and things like that, all sorts of leukocytes flowing through the blood, proteins, all sorts of stuff that are there that generally just look for to try and recognize things that are not you, and then trigger an immune response, maybe trigger that inflammatory response, trigger that specific mediated. That's the third line. The third line is the specific mediated antibodies, etc. type stuff, B cells, T cells, etc. Okay. Anyhow, let's look at a few of these, and then we'll stop and just give you time to kind of go back over lymph and a little bit of immunity in preparation for a quiz tomorrow. And the first we'll talk about are the white blood cells, the leukocytes. Now, we did not, being an unusual year, we did not go through blood yet. We're going to go back to it. But as you'll see, a lot of the precursor stem cells for blood, there is one that will make the red blood cells through hematopoiesis. But then the other stem cells are for different versions of white blood cells that attack different kinds of pathogens. Anyhow, spend a short time in circulation. A lot of them are located in loose and dense connective tissues where you get cuts and boo-boos, and as we know in tissue repair and stuff, that they're ready to migrate into the bloodstream and get into there and wall off areas and protect. Okay, so they can migrate out of the bloodstream into the damaged area, contact and adhere to vessel walls near the infection site, jam between those endothelial cells that are making the in the capillaries and stuff. Okay, and are attracted to chemicals from pathogens, damaged tissues, or other white blood cells. They'll be triggered. That's a positive response, a positive chemotaxis. When we're looking at homeostasis, that's a positive response. It's just a chemical signal when you have a pathogen, an infection, or something that says, let's go here. Okay. There's also stuff in lymph that is also associated with white blood cells and leukocytes. Okay. You have a couple of different types. You have 5, okay? And that's why I say of all the cell different precursors in the cells in your bloodstream, one really is for red blood cells, another a little bit for platelets, and then the other 5 are for different leukocytes. And the reason they're called granular or agranular, and you can look at pictures in your book and under the blood chapter, is just that the granular look green, look like they have little granules, little particles in them, whereas the agranular do not. They look fairly smooth and clear. Okay? And you can see the 5 types. There's neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, and then monocytes and lymphocytes. Okay. And they're all different they're all general and they all do stuff, but some are more, what they're focused on destroying is different for some. Some are more focused on bacteria, some might be more viral, some might be more parasitic type stuff, and worms and fungi. I'm a fungi. We won't spend as much time on that right now. We'll do that when we get back to blood, but it just gives you an idea that you have variation. It's not just one general white blood cell, but you have a variation of types that can look for all different types of pathogens. Okay, and here we go. The granular leukocytes and monocytes are large cells, bean-shaped nucleus enter tissues and become macrophages and do phagocytosis, which is engulfing the pathogen, and then it's got enzymes and stuff to chew it up. Lymphocytes in the lymph system. Slightly larger than a red blood cell with a large round nucleus, and they provide defense against specific pathogens or toxins. Yes, they are general, but when they mean specific pathogens or toxins, they're talking about types of things like bacteria and stuff. Okay, so not specific as I'm picking out this one necessarily, but they can be included, they are included in a specific immunity type. We'll see that later. Okay. And here you see a picture I stole from your book, and you can see that they all have this myeloid stem cell is the early stem cell for a lot of them. And here's the hemocytoblast. That is the one for most everyone. Separates in a myeloid or lymphoid stem cell. And then this is your specific defense with B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes and stuff in that specific cell-mediated type stuff. These, here you go, here's your strain that once you go through erythropoiesis becomes red blood cells. Here you go through thrombopoiesis, and this becomes your platelets. And here we go through leukopoiesis, and here's where you get your eosinophils, basophils, neutrophils, monocytes, and then your specific ones. Okay, that are all, those specific leukocytes are all part of the antibody triggered blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's the idea there. And again, we'll go back and talk about those a little more when we go through blood and discuss what they do. Okay. Then there's I can't do that one Monday morning. Immunological surveillance. This is just normal tissue. And NK cells are called natural killer cells. Don't know who named them. Like it. Sounds fun. Okay. Your normal cells are generally ignored by the immune system. They see you as you, unless for some reason you develop an immune system issue. Why is my Monday morning brain not working to say, anyhow, a suppressed immune system issue? It's not coming to me. It'll show up in a minute. Anyhow, cancer cells often contain those tumor-specific antigens. That's part of the trigger. NK cells can recognize as abnormal and destroy. So it is, just because a cell turns cancerous doesn't mean, bam, it can be destroyed. Killer cells also recognize bacteria, foreign cells, virus-infected cells, you know, everything. They're just a natural flowing around in your blood system monitor. Okay, so, okay. How do they do what they do? Okay. First step, presence of unusual plasma membrane activates the NK cell. Okay. So it doesn't recognize you as you, and that killer cell will adhere to the target. Okay. All right. So that's it. First, it's just recognition that the membrane doesn't look normal. That's it. Doesn't look like you. Doesn't have the markers. Okay. For people who are immune compromised and stuff, you know, that could be your own cells at times. Then the Golgi apparatus moves within an NK cell near the target cell, kicks out a bunch of secretory vesicles that have a substance called perforins. Okay. All right. So the NK cell moves on, its Golgi apparatus gets clear, kicks out this chemical called perforins. They release and they arrive at the target cell, and then basically they punch holes in the cell membrane of the invader. Okay. It can no longer maintain homeostasis and it disintegrates. Real simple stuff. You know, not always, none of these things are foolproof. You know, obviously, you know, depending on the proliferation of the cancer cells, that it won't necessarily stop things that are going on. But you kind of know the fight's going on because of the higher incidence of white blood cells and stuff. That's one of the things they look at, is the incidence of leukocytes to determine infection and stuff. Okay. Oh, and that picture did not, yeah. I'll reset that picture. That's showing you kind of how you can see how it works, but it's the writing didn't come through, but you can see that here's my foreign invader, here's my NK cell, here comes the Golgi apparatus migrating that way, here come the perforins. They're going to punch holes in and destroy. Okay. NK cells can also destroy abnormal cells. Okay. So during mitosis, this is another possibility during cell division, besides if it doesn't have those signals to do apoptosis. But then again, some of those abnormal cells can become cancer cells. All right, so that's really enough. That's a good start for today. That's enough for you to watch, because I want you to have time to kind of go back and look through lymphology, maybe check your textbook, check the previous stuff and whatever. Don't forget that we'll have that video tomorrow, that quiz tomorrow, and meet all at 1:20, and I'll send out that information. Anyhow, enjoy your Monday. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we will talk to you soon.